Hey, Indy filmmakers, I'm Nick Bodmer.
I'm Griffin Hammond, and today I'll show you how I used a Pixelstick to create a practical light painting effect for my new show.
Mr. Hammond.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing well.
I watched your intro. It was very cool.
Yeah. So this is...
It had a very Saturday Night Live effect to it.
Right. You remember...
Felt that way.
Do you remember I made this show before? I have this new show on Indy Mogul. Indy Mogul is coming back.
We're excited it's back. Yep.
And the show I'm doing is called Cheap Thing versus Expensive Thing. But does this...
Yeah, that was something you did way back in the day, right?
Yeah, it was like, I think in 2015 or something. I just created a couple episodes of this thing that I don't know if I really expected it to be more than a couple videos. I was kind of just doing it for fun. But the idea was to compare something that's really expensive and really cheap instead of like equal pairings. And maybe learn something about what money gets you in filmmaking.
And what's an important feature and what's not.
Right, exactly. But back then I used...
All right, so what are we comparing today? Go ahead, I cut you off.
Well, the first episode of the show will be comparing a $50 drone to a $1,500 drone.
Okay.
It's the...
Yeah, I'm going to guess there are some differences.
Yeah. It's the Mavic 2 Pro versus a knockoff Mavic. I mean, it's supposed to look like a Mavic, but it's only a $50 drone.
Okay. It has a camera and everything, though?
It has a camera, yeah. It has like a 720 HD camera versus the 4K
That's all you need.
camera in the Mavic. The cheap one doesn't have a gimbal.
All you need. Shocker. Okay, yeah.
But I wanted to create an intro for this show that we'd play in every episode, and I wanted to use this piece of technology that I have that I used in the original version of this show. It's called the Pixelstick. And do you remember what this thing is?
If I'm remembering properly, it's like a staff, like a long tube with an array of LEDs down it, and you can basically program it so that over a long exposure you can expose cool graphics. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's light painting, like you can run around with a flashlight during a long exposure and make a cool shape. But in this case, it's using its strip of LEDs to draw a logo or any piece of art or design that you put onto the SD card. So in this case, I just put the logo of the show, Cheap Thing versus Expensive Thing, and just drew those pieces out over long exposures.
So I looked at it, and it's got kind of a wavy flag look to it. I assume that's not in the graphic. That's from you walking with the stick. Is that true?
Yeah. It kind of bounces up and down a little bit. I mean, I'm trying to move it as smoothly as I can. I even thought about, like, if I really wanted to move it perfectly smoothly, that I could just attach the entire thing to a motorized slider. Like, then it would just...
But I think the jumping around is like part of the cool appeal of it, right?
Right.
It's like got a cool motion to it.
Yeah, I like that
I enjoy.
It's a little messy. It's kind of like, I like that it's a practically done effect. Like, this is the sort of thing that I'm not.
Right.
I don't have these skills in After Effects, but I can make something that looks graphical and interesting, but do it practically. So that's why I like it.
So how does it talk me? So I'm watching it. So obviously, are you having to walk back and forth and back and forth and back and forth during the exposure?
Yeah.
Is that, or the multiple time during the time lapse? You're basically shooting a time lapse,
right?
And you just go back and forth over the interval of the time lapse or the shutter time, or how do you time it out?
It's kind of hard to wrap your brain around this at first because normally if it's just a photo, I would just set the exposure time a little bit longer than how long it'll take the Pixelstick to draw the image. So if I set the Pixelstick to 4 seconds to draw this 640 pixels or however big the image is, I could set the camera to like a 6-second exposure. And all I really have to do is start the shutter and just make sure that before those 6 seconds are up, I complete the drawing. Because it's such a bright thing, it'll take over the exposure pretty easily.
Right.
But that's just to take one photo. If I want to turn this into video, it all has to be long exposure. So I can't shoot like regular frames of video. It has to be photos. And so a lot of times I'll just set it up as a time lapse where it's just taking a 6-second shot, then it pauses for 2 seconds, then it takes another 6-second shot. And so I'm just running back and forth, taking the same picture over and over and over again so that I can animate them. It just kind of becomes like this shaky thing.
And how do you, like, are you just basically listening to the camera to know when it's time to go again? Or, like, how are you knowing what the camera's doing? It seems like it'd be easy to get, like, out of sync with the camera.
Oh, yeah, it would be. I mean, luckily I can hear the shutter. So I would do it. I did it 2 different ways, though. I did it sometimes by myself. I would just set it up as a time lapse, and I would try to do it. But inevitably what would happen is I would miss every other shot because, like, a bike would come by or something. Like, I'd have to wait until a whole shot finished if someone interrupted me and then do the next one. So doing it that way was pretty annoying. Amy came with me on most of the shoot, and she could just say, go, when she pushed the shutter, and then I would start moving. That worked a lot better.
And how many frames do you need? I mean, so you're shooting, 24 frames a second? So if you want a 2-second shot, you got to do it 48 times?
I mean, I think I'm at least doubling up the frames in post. I might have even been doing more than that. I think it was just 2 frames. So you figure I need 12 shots to fill a second, or maybe it's 15 because I'm doing 30 frames a second, but I'm also looping them. So, at the very least, I probably need like 10 good frames to make a nice looking animation. And some of these are just kind of cool, like dancing around, but other times I would actually try to make it move. So then I'm actually...
Yeah, I noticed that you kind of came in from like off camera left and came like it walked into frame and then started your left to right action. And that looked pretty awesome, I thought.
So that we shot backwards. After we got our 20 good frames of it just sitting in the final position, then I slowly moved off camera. It was funny though because it's hard to understand what's happening. For a while, as Amy was shooting it, she was like, all right, but you're going off camera now, like you're out of the frame now. And I was like, that's what we want. Like, I want to do this where I'm mostly off. Like, some of these exposures are going to be like, we barely ever even see me get into the frame because I need to create that animation.
That's cool. And how many? So for that little motion part though, you probably need a bit more fidelity in terms of number of frames, right?
Yeah.
Or were you still doubling up frames?
I'm still doubling them up. Like,
okay.
I'm not trying to have like perfectly smooth 30 frame motion. I think 15 frames a second is fine for this kind of look. It kind of looks like an animated GIF or something.
And do you mark anything out on the street with tape to know where to go, or are you kind of just eyeballing it the whole time?
Most of the time we were eyeballing it, but like it was helpful. This is where it really helped to have Amy because she could review every exposure after we took it. So we would do a couple test ones. Yes. And she'd say, actually back up a little bit or move to the left. And she would point out bricks or something on the ground and we would kind of choreograph it that way.
And what do you do for focus? It looked like everything was pretty sharp. You were shooting it pretty closed aperture for that long shutter time anyway? Yeah,
I'd have to double check the exact settings, but I think it was probably like f8 or something. So it's pretty closed down because we're letting so much light in to do a 6-second exposure. I might have even had an ND filter on as well.
That's what I was going to ask, but I figured maybe not at night. But some of those streetlights and stuff are bright, so...
Right. I mean, I think I was able to kind of focus on the ground roughly where I thought I'd be. I'd have to focus in a different exposure mode. Like, I might have to crank up the ISO and there's no light yet to look at.
So how much is this Pixelstick? Are they expensive or reasonable?
I don't think it was that expensive. Let me check. I feel like it was like $150 or something. And the only reason I ever heard about it...
Do you just upload a JPEG, or what do you upload in terms of the image that you give it?
It has to be a very specific... It's a bitmap. And it's kind of awkward to edit because you would create a piece of art normally, like horizontally, but then you have to load it into the Pixelstick vertically. I don't know why. All the pictures have to be turned like 90 degrees on their side, and they have to be bitmaps. So it takes a little trial and error to understand the workflow. But you mentioned it at the beginning of the episode that this is a like Saturday Night Live effect. That's how I found out about this product in the first place.
Did they use this brand? Like, do they show that off or something? Okay,
yeah, it's the same thing. In fact, I mean, I may have learned about it because I went to Alex Buono. Alex Buono is a DP that works at Saturday Night Live and does digital shorts and bumpers and things for the show. And it may have been that he did a cinematography seminar that I attended in New York a few years ago, and I think he may have talked about this particular product. It's a very niche product to get.
It just seems like, I'm looking at their examples on their website. There's some really, like, they use like flames in the background and all this crazy stuff. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, arguably it might be more interesting for photographers than for video. It's kind of difficult to do the animation that you need for video. Oh, this thing is more expensive than I thought it was. It's $350.
It's not that bad though for,
yeah,
I don't know. It seems pretty good.
It's definitely a very unique product. I love, and people were looking at me like I was crazy in Washington Square Park, because you can imagine what they're seeing.
A guy with a stick running back and forth, a light stick. You look like you're trying to play Star Wars or something, probably.
Yeah, and the stick is pretty much just like flashing colors. Like all they can see is they're looking at like one pixel wide part of my image at a time. They have no idea why this thing is like changing colors and what it means, and why are you walking in a straight line over and over and over again.
I love the idea of you looking like an idiot, so
yeah,
I enjoy that.
Well, hopefully people like the effect and enjoy the show as we continue to make new episodes of it on Indy Mogul.
If you could only pick one, would you prefer that they like the show or like the effect?
Oh, that's actually, it's a tight race. Because I hope they like the show, but I feel like the intro itself is where I was really trying to be creative.
Exquisite. Alrighty, my friend.
Well, yeah.
Anything else to tell me about this fine day?
That's it for this time. I'll let everyone know when new episodes of Cheap Thing versus Expensive Thing are coming out. But you can, of course, subscribe to me on my channel. You probably already are. And you can subscribe to Indy Mogul if you were never subscribed to that channel. And also on my website at griffinhammond.com, you could sign up for email updates, and I can send everyone an email when.
Can you give us a preview? We know you're doing the drone one. Do you have episode 2 decided yet? What you might be comparing?
Oh yeah, episode 2 is going to be underwater gear. It's going to be that $42 underwater bag versus $2,500 worth of underwater housing equipment.
Might I end up in this episode?
You might be in it, yeah. I'll make sure you're in it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you later. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So then all I have to do is hit the shutter.
Hey, I got to pause. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I'll turn this off and you can call me back.
All right, I'll call you back.
Okay, sorry.